One thing that I wish that I would have done differently when I was originally setting up this chicken yard was this chicken yard has worked out really well for the first few seasons, but there's something that, had I known what I know now, I certainly would have changed at the start of it. Having a chicken yard has been a fantastic addition for the health of my birds, not only their happiness, but their productivity as well. The one thing I will say about having a chicken yard is it's not a passive system. It almost requires me to come in here daily and maintain it. Thought I'd show a little bit of the work that I'm going to be doing in here over the course of the next couple of days. The flow of the compost material in the yard essentially comes through that gate there, which is a little bit higher than where it exits over here. A lot of people have asked, what's up with all these milk crates? And they're used for a number of different things depending on what I want to use them for at any given moment. But one of the things they're used for is it's just they're a movable barrier. They're easily moved to reorient where I want compost to flow. One of the primary functions that they're used for is I've got them lining the entire perimeter. And the reason that I do that is because I want the chickens to not dig right up against the fence. Anytime you have chickens in an area, they typically want to go up next to something, put their breast right up on it, and then they either dig a hole there to dust bathe or search for food. This was all level with those boxes yesterday, and they've come in here searching for food down into this deep layer of carbon. This is the compost I just removed out of the yard, and there is a lot of larger artifacts in there, biochar, there's some rocks, there's some bones. About twice a year, I come through and top dress a lot of these perennials out in this edible landscape. I've got some aromatics, I've got some culinary herbs surrounding a central figure, which is a 4-in-1 almond tree. You've got sage, rosemary, and some Italian oregano back there that are pretty happy. This plant right here, I started from something that big that I started by just sticking in the ground, getting it established, having it strike root. And this is one of several plants that I've started on this property from doing just that. But they've all been the beneficiaries of this fertility coming out of the chicken yard. But some of these plants that didn't look so hot last year are starting to show a little bit of signs of life. But I'm just encouraging all of this soil development by returning that fertility. And the beautiful part about this compost coming out of the chicken yard in this coarse fashion is that the heavier material, the heavier carbon, essentially will act as a mulch, if you will. Here's a Yasta berry that wasn't too happy last year, but it's coming to life. Looks like it's starting to like its new spot. And again, that all starts with healthy soil. Twice a week or so is I'll come through this area where the finishing chute is, and as larger material gets kicked to the surface, I'll skim it and bring it into a pile, and then I gather it up, put it in my wheelbarrow over here, which is going to go out into the orchard. Fairly well refined. Chickens have been working it for a long time, and again, it's about 8 months old. But it's going to get relocated, and this will act as a backstop for all of this material that's going to be folded in. This is the pile that I've been most recently adding to, and I'm going to bring that in first into this area, and then I will remove this barrier, which will allow me to take all of that and start to bring it down into the finishing chute. And then I'll finish off on the back side of this pile with the remainder over there out in this area, since this is going to be the material that will go out first. This is just a temporary platform. This piece of plywood that I use goes underneath the maggot bucket, which helps to, when the maggots are dropping and the chickens are out in the yard, they can get on top of here and it's easy pickings for them. And then overnight, as they fall out, it basically kind of concentrates them off of the board into a certain area, and then in the mornings the chickens come and they're able to harvest and grab some protein. I think I'm going to reorient these down at the lower end here, and my intent is to bring in some wood chips into this area, but I'm going to block off this exit chute right here or so, just confining all of this compost to this area. Anytime one of these piles is completely turned and disturbed, it brings out all kinds of goodies for the chickens, and it really reinvigorates their interest in turning some compost. Put that in there so it doesn't go anywhere. I'll move this over. I'll start taking the last remaining bit of this compost and getting it moved over to the chute. But starting a nice little accumulation. Now that I've got all this compost moved over, I've decided to bring a barrier across here so that the chickens can work it in this area, but it doesn't get completely blown out. I'm going to bring some water in to rehydrate some of this compost. And tomorrow I'll work on bringing in a bunch of carbon. This Paris Island Coss is still producing well for us, so I'm going to keep that in here, but I'm going to be dropping in some additional vegetables, some beans and such. And then chickens are over here in the chicken tunnel doing what chickens do. But let me take this over to the compost ring. One thing that I wish that I would have done differently when I was originally setting up this chicken yard was I never really anticipated having a piece of equipment at my disposal. And since then, I've got a tractor. However, all the work that needs to be done inside of here has to be done manually by me with a pitchfork. And that's just an oversight on my part. So if I had to do it again, I would have definitely spaced out the vegetation that's in here. I would have planned it accordingly so that I would have had gates placed properly, and I could have come through here and moved this material around, which would have definitely lessened my workload. But nonetheless, I'm gonna move some of this out by hand, take a few wheelbarrows out, and then I'm gonna bring in some additional wood chips here this morning. But the day starts anew, and chickens are out and seem to be happy. This section over in the corner is where I dump wood chips and I bring them in. So there's an overabundance over here, and I don't add any nitrogen to it. So it's essentially, it's just kind of like a carbon sponge that will decompose over time. But a lot of this heavier material gets kicked to the surface, and so I'm going to come through, skim the top, and get down to where it's starting to break down and be a little bit more decomposed. The chickens will continue to work in these areas, but I'm also going to be bringing in some additional carbon. I've taken about a yard's worth of material out of this perimeter area and relocated it in the orchard. But as I open it up, get down to where some moisture's at, there's obviously soil life down there cruising around. And so it reinvigorates the chickens to get down in there and go to work on it. I've got a pretty deep layer all the way around the perimeter. And where I'm lacking actually is right in the middle. And I'd like to get this at least 10 to 12 inches deep. At this point, I've lost track of how many yards I've brought in, but probably somewhere around 7 to 8 yards. And I've got 10 to 12 inches, I would say, in most areas. And what makes it really nice is that now I can just start my compost rings. When this one gets filled up and starts to spill over, I'll move to the center of the yard, put another ring here, and then I typically run another ring out in this area. And I don't have to bring in any more carbon because obviously it's all right here now. Hey, thanks for watching, and please consider subscribing to the channel. We'll see you in the next video.